Hey, this is Now You Try, a podcast about self-sufficiency, sustainability, craftsmanship, and everything it takes to do it yourself.
So here we sit, Dave Barrow, Eden East Farms. Dude, this is a very, very cool spot. Thanks for having us out here. This is cool.
Welcome. We are really enjoying everything that we're doing here.
I can tell. And, we came out here, everybody's working. And it's a rainy kind of gross day, but I guess that doesn't mean you get to just...
You work rain or shine,
call it
light
in.
or dark. Every single moment's a day to farm.
That's all. And, you're just talking off mic beforehand, talking about your farm stand here that... And this is the kind of thing with somebody that doesn't come from this background, doesn't work in this world, they just don't think about is, for the farm stand, for it to start in the morning, you said you're out here with headlamps at night.
Yes. We start fairly early on our market days, so that is before sunrise. It'll range depending on the day. Today was a little bit later because of the rain, since it rained all night. But, we want to give the freshest produce available, and that means that we're harvesting day of.
I mean, that's like... dirt still on it kind of fresh. That's not...
Well, we wash the dirt, but yes. The analogy exists is that it is so fresh that if you put it on your plate for lunch, you're talking under 6 to 7 hours out of the ground.
Oh, that's so cool.
That is really cool.
That's like what you hope for, like when you're a home gardener, you're a hunter. That's kind of like the dream. And to come to a real business in the middle of East Austin. And I have to give that context that, we're driving through East Austin. I turn off of a busy East Austin street and then I'm on a farm.
Right.
A legit farm.
Right. Legit farm, 5 acres that is 3 miles from the state capitol steps. So you can briskly walk in under an hour to the state capitol from here.
It's Texas. We don't walk.
That is so true.
You hop in an F-350.
You can hop in your truck and be there in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Now you're speaking Texas language.
We're 2.2 miles from downtown, and what makes Austin unique is that there's 4 urban farms within a quarter mile of each other. Other urban areas, other metropolitan areas have urban farms, but they're not so concentrated as we are here. So these are our neighbors. These are people that we seek advice from. These are people that we speak to Austin. We host East Austin Urban Farm Tour every spring. I think it's going to be the 11th annual this coming April. Maybe more. Don't quote me on that.
So you guys got kind of a rising tide vibe going though. That's...
What's the reason for having those 4 farms so close together?
Number one is soil. So everything from I-35 and as you get closer to the river and then on the other side of the river, just a good river bottom alluvial soil. So extremely rich black soil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's the main reason.
Yeah, that's the one thing knowing people that own, farm and ranch land around here is that it's patchy in Texas. Like that's what people don't realize. You think of, and I think a lot of people think of farmland as, pretty, monotone, so to speak. They think of it as like one kind of soil. But around here, like you can have, 3 miles down the road, you can have completely different soil than you have somewhere else. I didn't realize how patchy it was. And that black land, like you're talking about, is really kind of the gold standard around here.
It's the gold standard. There's a really cool historical fact about this part of Texas, specifically between Austin and Bastrop, where it was the largest spinach growing area in the United States in the early 1900s. So much so that they even used the train cars that they would put the big ice blocks on, if you guys remember those stories. And that's how they would ship the spinach from here to New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I love that because you never think of Texas as like
the spinach growing area.
Yeah, like all the fresh veggies coming.
Anything but oil and cattle, right?
Yeah, seriously, this is a cattle state, and I think that dominates the landscape, and probably because of the soil quality issues we talked about. You can run cattle on rock.
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons there's so many places that can run cattle, and that's it's so ubiquitous. But spinach. Spinach in Texas.
And going back to the soil, what's really cool is that even the patchy nature exists on one piece of property. So away from the creek that bisects our property here in the middle and towards the street sides on the west and the east, it actually gets sandier soil in those rows where we grow crops. Yeah. So you grow different things in different soil makeups.
So even on this 5-acre spot, you've got different kinds of soil.
Correct. And every farm here in East Austin is like that.
That's fascinating. That's rather than seeing that as a limitation, that's actually an opportunity, right, to do different stuff.
Frame of mind, right? So yes, we use it to grow different things. So potatoes grow better, root crops grow better in sandier soil. Other things that have deeper root systems or that need more nutrition, we grow them more in the black alluvial soil.
Cool.
Then furthermore, probably the affordable land during that period of time. So
saying affordable land in Austin is that's weird.
Doesn't
to hear
exist
those,
anymore.
Right.
Doesn't exist anymore. But so when my predecessor Glenn Ford bought this property in '91, the city of Austin was promoting a program for people to come to East Austin to start businesses. So he bought this piece of property, started a business on this piece of property, and then hired neighborhood people to be his long-term employees. He even had one person who worked for him for 25 years. So he grew a business here. It started out as a landscaping business and then transitioned into this urban farm, which we've now started to manage. Boggy Creek, which is the oldest urban farm here in Austin. They even have a historical house on the property that was built the months before the French legation. Its property at the time that they bought it was, affordable at that time. Yeah. House Bar Farm, it used to be essentially a run-down crack house where transients and other types of individuals that were drug users or homeless lived on the property. Their chicken coop, or one of their chicken coops, is actually an old structure that was on the property that used to have drug dealers in it. And now they're growing specialty herbs, specialty flowers, having donkeys, chickens, rabbits, geese, etc.
You can repurpose some of that meth gear into chicken gear. I'm positive.
You'll have some very, very active chickens.
Yeah, they're going to lay more. There you
go. And I don't know much about the history of Rain Lily, which is behind us, but I know that Steph and Kim, whenever they bought the property, it was quite affordable as well.
Yeah, so talk about who you provide for around here, because obviously you have the farm stand, but I think a lot of people would be thinking, if you're a smaller farm in the middle of a city, you're not going to have the distribution range like a big place that's got an army of trucks or anything like that. So who are your primary customers? Who's all this delicious produce getting out to?
For sure. So our first priority is our restaurant on site. So what makes us unique is that we are an urban farm restaurant and an event space. So our restaurant on site, Eden East, utilizes basically their backyard as what are they making that week. Their menu changes, often. And whenever I say often, it could change anywhere from every 2 weeks to every 4 weeks. Yeah. They will do a la carte night and their prefix menu, and they're designing the menu to fit what we have seasonally. So they're the first priority. The second priority is that there's over 3 dozen restaurants that either visit us here at the market stand on Wednesdays and Saturdays throughout the year, or we deliver to them. And then finally, there's a couple of companies that we like to support and help them out. They are in the local food movement. There's Farmhouse Delivery, which we deliver greens to quite often. And then, funny enough, Tito's Vodka. They are starting a new program where they want to feed their employees, and so we deliver to their cafeteria. And
that's cool.
That's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they feed their employees with some of our produce.
Do they pay you in vodka?
No, and I am just fine with that.
It's probably the best.
I'm healthier not to get paid in vodka.
That's probably it's more Austin than an urban farm supplying fresh produce to Tito's Vodka.
Correct.
Yeah,
and let me just add, they do have their own farm now too.
Wow.
Yeah, that creates a CSA for their employees. And a CSA is a community supported agriculture. You basically get a box of veggies a week. Type of thing. So
that's amazing.
That company's doing some interesting things. So restaurant here, restaurants all over. And then because we host the farm stand, we have private individuals that come in here on any given Wednesday or Saturday, especially if the weather's good. We can count 200 to 300 people that walk through these doors.
That's excellent, man.
Yeah.
I love that idea. You're pulling stuff up out of the ground and creating a mini economy. You're creating like its own sustainable economy in there. So, we talked a little bit about how you kind of came into this. And before, like I said, when we were walking around, you're showing us the place. You talked a little about how you came to this. So, I mean, I want to hear more about that. I want to hear first of all, obviously the how, the mechanics of how you got here and everything, but really I'm more interested in the why. Because, the story I think speaks for itself, but I'm really more interested in, there's a lot of avenues you could have gone. Mm-hmm. How does running a highly sustainable farm in the middle of Austin and dealing with all the headaches that come with that, what's your why there? How did you come to that?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Right. Are you crazy?
Yes. The answer is a resounding yes. I think I hear that every single day. But in truth, everyone wants to do certain things in their life. They want to, maybe leave a footprint somewhere. Mm-hmm. They want to add value to their community. They, may seek to just be happy. Wake up and go to bed happy every single day. And that may be the why.
Yeah. Honest day's work.
An honest day's work. I, spent almost 2 decades in a completely other industry, and, traveled far and wide and got to experience a whole lot of good things, meet a whole lot of good people. But when it came down to it, I wasn't fully fulfilled. And so, throughout my life, I've always done a little bit of everything else. And, there was moments where I always had a backyard garden, no matter where I lived. I was always going out and seeking certain communities that I had a high amount of respect for. And, then when this opportunity arose, where, my predecessor was like, hey, will you run this place? I spent a good 6 months debating it, and thinking like, can I do this? How would I do it, et cetera? And so I read copious amounts. I talked to a lot of people.
Because you weren't a farmer. I mean, that.
I was not a farmer. I was something else that started with an F. I was a filmmaker.
There's a lot of overlap in those, though.
Well, there's some processes. There is some work ethic that go into both.
Probably the most important part.
And it was kind of coincidental where the last decade, in that a lot of my creative projects surrounded food. All right, so there was food documentaries, there was chef profiles, there was food photography, there were politically active short pieces that helped certain causes that I believed in. So through that, I got to know a lot of the community. I got to experience their lives through their eyes, right? And admired it that much more. And then when coupled that with a couple of things that I'd done in the past, I was like, maybe. But can someone learn everything about farming? No. That's another great thing about this, is that I'm learning something new every single day. I'm having to problem solve every single day. And it also doesn't help that I really enjoy planning stuff.
180,
200 days, 250 days in advance, I'm thinking about the future.
But that's how, any size farmer, that's how you have to be.
Oh yeah.
And that's, you can't think in terms of just the next yield. You got to think in terms of how to make this land work long term.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think seeing out there was like how self-sufficient you guys really are, which is, it's such a hard thing to wrap your mind around until you get on site at any farm, especially small one like this, to see how self-sufficient it is. So the sustainability part of it, you guys do a fantastic job because, like I said, you're very self-sufficient. But here's what I'm wondering. Was that always like a goal, like a pie in the sky, or was that just a side effect of, being small, being local, the scale that you're working at? Was sustainability like a big goal, or was it something that just kind of arose over time that you found it was better to do it that way?
Sustainability was always a goal, and it was never a pie in the sky type of idea. So whenever we think about sustainability, we think about low to no waste. That means we're not wasting any food. We're, when we have events or the restaurant's doing here, we're not trying to throw away unnecessarily. We're not trying to use packaging unnecessarily. Sustainability and self-sufficiency means that our carbon footprint is low. We're not traveling 50, 100, 150 miles away to deliver our product. It means that we have less packaging on our product. So, you may get food from us and it may have rubber bands. That is the only packaging. We're not using paper, plastic, etc. To package our goods, which means we'll never be in a store. We'll never be in a Whole Foods. We'll never be in an H-E-B. We'll never be in a Trader Joe's or anything like that. And that's totally fine with us. Our market is direct to consumer.
And that's on them, though. They need to change that paradigm. You don't need to come up to theirs.
Right. Making sure that the restaurant on site is low to no waste, making sure that the farm is low to no waste, making sure that our carbon footprint is low. So much so that, we want to make our own soil, which is, our compost pile. We're consistently adding to it, turning it several times a year, monitoring it to make sure that what we're putting back on our property is just a circle, right? Yeah. So everything begins and ends with the compost pile. And that to us is almost the pure sign of a urban farm practicing sustainability and self-sufficiency.
Yeah, and we both pretend at backyard gardening and are trying to learn more about it. And
did you plant something in the ground?
Yes.
And did you plant something in the ground?
Yes.
So you're doing more than practicing. You're doing it, right?
Oh, we got endorsed by a real farmer.
Yay.
All right, we really did it.
I think everybody should plant something, no matter what. Whether it's a herb garden on your windowsill, whether it's some greens in your backyard, whether you want one tomato plant in a pot somewhere, it's just fine. If we as a society had a goal of planting 5, 10, 20% of our own stuff that we ate, your cost would go exponentially down. Your mentality would shoot through the roof. You'd be a happier individual. It's a relaxation type of thing as well. And you would build community, because what do most conversations resolve around when you go to a dinner party? Food, right. Where'd you get this? Yeah. How does it taste? How'd you prepare it?
Yeah.
And if you happen to just say like, oh, those cucumbers were right out there on the trellis outside. Oh, those herbs are from my kitchen windowsill right there. There's going to be more powerful digestion of that from people than anything else. They're going to go like, oh my God, that's so cool. Oh my God, I have totally more respect for that person, because they know the effort it takes.
Well, and it makes it seem more attainable for them too. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, my neighbor or my friend who lives across town does this.
Exactly.
So I can do it.
Yeah, and we're not talking like, hey, go out there and your 365, 24/7 has to be planted in your backyard. No, that's difficult. Just a couple things.
Sure.
Couple things.
Because the more you do that at home, that's less stuff you're buying.
Exactly.
Right? It's less carbon footprint.
Exactly.
It's less packaging you're purchasing.
Perfection.
All that stuff.
And I like what you said too about the connection between when you serve something to somebody like that. We're both hunters. We talk about that. And you get that same thing when it's game meat that you put on the table, you cleaned, you prepared, you cooked. There's a certain amount of personal pride. There's a connection to that happens. And there's that saying that, cooking for someone is an expression of love.
Yep.
And I think that's even deeper when you've had a hand in the growth or the harvesting of that food. And it was easier for me, I guess, as a dude, to think about that in terms of hunting. Mm-hmm. And I think the challenge for me, and probably both of us, has been Luke has a lot more experience with food than I do with preparing it, cooking it, understanding it. But it took a while for me to come around to realizing that what I grow in my backyard, I can have that same amount of connection to.
Yeah.
That first meal that you produce, that's all the meat that you harvested, seasoned with herbs that you grew in your backyard and with vegetables that you grew.
Yeah.
That's different.
You're creating a story, right?
Yeah.
You are essentially curating something that someone's going to taste.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of someone looking at a piece of Salvador Dali's art or Hieronymus Bosch's art, you are curating this flavor palette.
Yeah.
Right. And the herbs are going to be indicative of tasting exactly what that dirt tastes like, exactly what that area tastes like. Because dill on our property will taste different than dill grown in the north or the west or the east or anything like that. Cilantro here will taste different than cilantro grown 200 miles away. A deer or a wild pig or anything that you hunt in Texas will taste different than taste somewhere else because of what they consume, what the weather is like, where they sleep, how much they travel, etc.
Yeah, life feeds on life all the way up.
Yeah.
It doesn't disappear and dissipate into the air at some point.
Exactly.
And I think you can make the point that when that does start to dissipate is when you truck in food from 1,000 miles away and things that don't grow in the area. Not that there's anything wrong with it. We're not trying to. The whole point of this whole thing is not to throw judgment down on people that are doing what everybody's been doing for the past 100 years. Post-industrial revolution. But at the same time, now we're in a really cool place where we have so much information available. You can realize that, hey, trucking it in from 1,000 miles away, it does not have that same connection.
Right.
It doesn't. And what a cool privilege that we have so much food and so much bounty in this country, in this culture that we have, that we can think about those kind of esoteric things instead of just like, where's the next meal coming from?
Well, and thinking about creating experiences for people, right? If we're all eating, cilantro from, I don't know, California or wherever most of the cilantro comes from, right?
Yeah, Central Valley.
All our cilantro tastes the same, right? So we're all having the same cilantro experience.
Right.
But, if my friends from, California are in town and they eat cilantro from out of my backyard or from right here, it's going to taste different.
Yeah.
Their experience is going to be different.
Yeah.
Can we make a note to call this episode the Cilantro Experience?
The
with Dave
cilantro
Barrow?
experience. Colon. It does not taste like soap.
Yeah.
Do you taste soap when you eat cilantro?
I would eat a cilantro salad. Like,
Me too.
I
Yeah,
love
me too.
cilantro, stems and all. Stop throwing away the stems, people.
They're so usable in salsas and guacamole and anything. You
Everything.
can stuff a chicken with them, whatever you want to
They're
do.
delicious.
Just this morning, we had someone walk in to the market and they were like, hey, what herbs do you have available? I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for asking. We've got dill, curly parsley, flat leaf parsley, cilantro, lemongrass. What else did we have over there? We had a few other things over there. The sign's right there. Rosemary, oregano, dill, bay. We had some cops as well.
Sounds like a few.
It sounds like a few. And I was going through all of them. She's like, well, hey, I've never bought fresh herbs before. What is the taste going to be like compared to dried herbs? And I was like, well, let's go through them.
Yeah.
And so we started tasting everything fresh, and she was like, oh my gosh, it's so pungent, it's so flavorful. And then we got to the cilantro, and she's like, oh my God, did you wash the soap off? And I was like, oh ma'am, we don't use soap to wash this. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And I tried it a second time because I got worried.
Be sure.
I got worried. I was like, wait a minute, we didn't use soap to wash this. But then I tasted it. I was like, no, it doesn't. I was like, oh my gosh, this is one of the, it's a minority of people.
Yeah.
I don't remember the number. It's somewhere between like 20 and 30%.
I always have
people.
20% in my mind for that particular
Right.
thing.
It's somewhere, around a quarter percentage of people that taste cilantro as soapy.
Yeah.
And it's just something in their taste buds.
I
And
feel so sad for those people.
same.
Especially living in Central Texas.
Especially living in
Yeah.
Central Texas, So obviously she didn't buy the cilantro, but she did try everything else and took a bunch of everything else home.
It's awesome.
And we spoke about like how to use it fresh, cook it, etc.
That's
great.
and the business part is great, but that's got to be what you live for right there, is to have somebody have a conversion experience on your property.
Right. And that's a really powerful example and very coincidental that it happened today.
Yeah.
But those
We sent her over.
Thank you so much. Those episodes of people or those experiences with people, they do happen. We get, obviously, we're an urban farm. It's a popular thing. Local food is a popular thing. If it was our druthers, we would hope it's not a trend, but we know that we recognize that there is a certain type of person that's going to come in here.
Sure.
Those new people that we get and that trickle in, and they trickle in slowly, but they're coming. Those are the ones that we just absolutely are enamored with, because we get to have these experiences where we're tasting stuff with them. We're talking about recipe building. One of the great things, because of the relationship with the restaurant here, we provide recipes as well. So whenever we are putting out our value-added goods, like our pickles or our pickled peppers or our fermented cabbage or our kimchi or anything like that, people are like, what do you do with this? We're like, thank you for asking.
Well,
check out this little card. This is what you can do with it. And we hand out these recipes, and then we're just like, hey, take a picture, send it to us. Here's my number. Tell me what you think. And there's this active feedback, and there's this circular communication that's now happening that we find value in. And then we see them come back.
Yeah. Now, you know what pops into my head when you're saying all that too, and the aesthetic of this place and everything that you're doing also makes me think this is, we're talking a lot about, you know, these kind of epiphanies, conversion experiences, stuff like that, but in a way, aren't some of these things just the same stuff that was happening 125 years ago, and we just all forgot about it?
Well,
probably not a lot of kimchi recipes.
Yeah, probably not a lot of kimchi recipes going on in Central Texas.
But you know what I mean, right? Like this is almost like how it used to be.
The farm-to-table movement was always around.
Yeah.
Okay. It just so happens that most people grew more than 20% of their own goods. Yeah. Most people grew what they were eating all the time, and then they would trade and barter with their neighbors, right? And then the Industrial Revolution happens. People stop growing as much on their own. They start growing large quantities to sell off to bigger corporations. People move from rural areas to urban areas. They start consuming more as opposed to growing more. So they're practically growing zero in an urban setting. And then, you know, someone came up with the idea of TV dinners.
Right.
And there was a generation of people who weren't taught to cook through radio, through TV, through their neighbors, through the grocery stores. They were raised, you know, after World War II, they were raised to go like, hey, take your husband home, because it was very female targeted. Take your husband home this dinner, heat it up, and you're good to go. And then you see those kids of those families grew up not cooking, and then they came back to seeking out local food, seeking out healthy food, etc. And then those are the ones who are now teaching us. Yeah,
that's a good point.
You're right. So there was a very big lost generation of people who didn't even know about food.
Yeah. And it's that a lot of it is the baby boomer generation, that the children of the 1950s. Mm-hmm. And there's a really cool thing, like it kind of comes from reading about the history of the Budweiser company. When I was really into beer, I read this long kind of like
is there a local beer? Not to interrupt, but I just did.
Yeah.
Is there a purely local beer? Local yeast, local malts, local barley, whatever it may be. Is there one example?
Trying to think. Jester King, probably.
Yeah. Do they use local hops?
That's a great question.
Wait, do they hop their beer, being sour beers?
Yeah, I'm sure they have. I don't know. That's not really a common with the style. Maybe 512. No, 512. Because there have been some grains from other places in a lot of those beers.
That's your next episode.
That is. Find somebody who's doing it.
A truly sustainable,
Josh.
Localized.
Josh from might be doing that from Hops and Grain.
That's great.
I could see Josh. I don't know if you ever met Josh Hare. He's we did some work with him. We actually helped him produce dog treats way back when.
Very cool.
We ran a catering company for a hot minute.
Yeah.
And we did like
for dogs.
For a catering company for dogs.
Well, we did catering.
It sounds like a pretty killer party.
We did a catering event
Honestly,
at Hops and Grain, and he was talking about how he was making dog treats out of his spent grain. Yeah. And we were like, we could do that for you.
There you go.
We did that for him for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, not catering for dogs. Although now I'm furious that we didn't think in this climate. Do you know how well a catering company for dogs would do in Austin?
In Austin,
we're gonna remove this section of the podcast. So
I'm gonna need you to sign a non-disclosure.
That's just fine. Just fine. Remove this section. Funny enough, and totally this is tangential as well.
Yeah. That's what we do.
I lived in San Francisco before this, and in San Francisco there was more dogs than children.
No, I believe that.
I can assure you, within the next decade, you will see the same thing in Austin. There will be more dogs than families with children that live in the city of Austin.
I totally believe that. And San Francisco's basically moving here, so that's also has something to do with it. A lot of the people from there are coming here.
Okay, so go back before the beer.
What was I even talking about?
Budweiser.
Oh yeah, well the invention of refrigerated trucks made all this possible.
Yeah,
that's what made Budweiser rise to prominence, and that's what made them dominate the market. And that's what happened with a lot of packaged food.
Yeah.
Is that once refrigerated trucks became possible, you can now grow something in California, get it to Texas, and it won't spoil. You can put it in a supermarket where it's refrigerated. And that 1950s generation, that was a TV dinner generation, and that's. And you said something that really sticks with something Luke and I talk about all the time is the lost generation thing. Yeah. There's so much of that. We talk about it in terms of hunting all the time too.
Right. Yeah. Because my dad, he hunted and fished, but right about when I got old enough to want to get into it, he stopped doing it.
Right.
And I find that's the case with a lot of my friends, or their grandfathers fished and hunted, and then their dads just kind of didn't anymore.
So I'm in that latter category where my dad didn't fish, hunt, or do anything outdoorsy, and I had to seek it out on my own and learn from my grandfather.
Yeah.
That's cool. You had him though to learn from. That's a cool resource
for sure. And it's important for people to get back to that. I think that people need to recognize that animals are hunted. Animals are procured in a different way than vegetables are grown, right? And they need to know that there can be a clean, proper way of doing it all, as opposed to a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, it's I can't believe you hunt. That's so awful. While I'm in the drive-thru at McDonald's,
exactly,
to get a hamburger. It's
exactly.
What you are eating.
Where did that meat come from?
So much more processed than what I'm eating.
Yeah, and not to mention that we talked about carbon footprint too. If you want to look at your carbon footprint, talk about how much factory farm meat you're eating. That's a big deal. And that was, for me personally, we both have our own, personal motivations for getting into the outdoors, hunting, fishing, things like that. A big one for me became my footprint, getting my family off the factory farming dole. Because that was the first thing. There's a lot of cases you can make for cutting the amount of meat in your diet or, going vegan and things like that. A lot of good ethical reasons for it. But it's really hard to look in the face of the environmental impact of beef, of pork, of meat, and not think, wow, maybe I shouldn't be so big a part of that. So filling a freezer of stuff that you got, it's pretty good reason to do it.
Yeah. Again, I just want to differentiate, and I think you're doing a really good job of it, is that there is a difference between small family-run ranchers, farmers, and
great point,
and large conventional farming / animal production.
Yeah, great point.
Right.
So, a feedlot of 30,000 cattle on, 50 acres is going to do way more damage to the environment, way more damage to any natural processes out there than a, beef cattle ranch on 200 acres that has less cattle, that's grazing properly, etc. Rome Ranch, which is doing practicing regenerative agriculture with their bison herds, their turkeys, their chickens, etc. out in the hill country is a good example of somebody doing proper regenerative agriculture. Bastrop Cattle Company out in Bastrop, which is a completely grass-fed cattle company, family run for 3 decades or so. They're doing something really proper with how they concentrate on what they're doing with the soil, what they're doing with the animals, et cetera. And then they're not shipping to LA, Chicago, New York.
And that's
they're keeping their product. So they're keeping their carbon footprint low.
Yeah. If I'm, they're raising the cows right, which is great. They get their space, which is great. And they're taking care of the land, which is very important. But also, it's not, I'm not eating cows from Chile.
Exactly.
Or Canada.
Exactly.
Right? The trucking is also a big part of that.
Totally. And to take it a step further, and again, I recognize the fact that people have different diets and they may not be carnivorous or are omnivorous or support animal production. But there's, something to be said for if you want to practice sustainability and self-sufficiency, is being able to, grow your own, source your own, or even support the local economy. So here in Texas, we have game animals, right? So if you want to go out and get certain types of deer, whatever's in season, or our wild invasive ones, if you want to hunt rabbits or anything like that, if you want to hunt wild turkeys, that's what we have here. Whereas in the north, it's going to be different. There will be species that you can get, and you're going to get proteins from those. It may be weird, it may look different, but there's a proper cooking technique. There's a proper way to source it where you're going to get something that's going to be just as tasty, if not better, and so I think if people think about where they live and they eat depending on where they live,
locavore,
they're going to be healthy, right? They're going to be happy. And they're only putting money into the economy, which is going to be better for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's touching upon many elements.
Well, and it's helping small businesses too.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because people forget this. It's a real common thing for people to think that we're above or apart from nature instead of part of it. And you got to remember, you live there too. You're an organism living there in that food web. And I learned that term because my kids are learning this stuff. They're learning some ecology.
About organisms?
Yeah.
You're an organism?
They're learning
or a collection of organisms?
A collection of organisms, if you will. But the food chain is gone. That's old news. It's a food web now, which is actually way more descriptive. I just learned that. I looked at a 7-year-old's worksheet, and that was my prep work.
Oh, good deal. Congratulations.
Yeah.
What else is your children's homework teaching us about our food system that we need to know about?
Seriously, probably way more than I'm picking up.
How politically active is this teacher, and what are they imparting upon your children?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna
what
go.
are the motivations there?
Yeah, what are they after? What are they trying to get into my kids' heads? Yeah, like ABCs. What is that really all about?
Do your kids ask about the food system?
They do.
And do they ask about where the food comes from, or do you educate them?
So that's a 2-stage process. And I think we both kind of experienced that as we became more active and interested, because this hasn't been from the jump, day one, our lives have been this, sustainability and thinking about being self-sufficient, supporting your local food web. But as we got more into it, the kids started learning to ask questions. Like now when my son cuts into a piece of red meat, it won't just be an assumption that it's steak. He'll ask, what is this? Is this venison? What is this? So yes, they are asking those questions, but that's directly related to us as grown-ups. And I know you've had similar things because your little boy, Sam, he wants to get in the blind.
My 3-year-old is ready to go hunting. Every time he wakes up and I'm not there, and he goes, "Where's Dad?" Mom says, "Yeah, he's hunting. Without me again?" So he's ready for it. He wants to do it.
You're scarring him for life right now.
I'm brainwashing him. Yeah, I basically created my own little hunting buddy.
That's what parenting is.
My 7-year-old daughter, though, she likes to give me the business.
Yeah,
we'll have some venison for dinner. Dad, why did you have to go get this deer? And Sam will go, "Dad got this deer because it's delicious. I like deer."
So he's lobbying for favorite status, which I think is smart.
Okay.
It's wise, yeah. So, okay, and that reminds me too, thinking about home, because this is as I'm driving down to come meet with you and tour the place, this is the thought that just pervades my head, that's why I'm so fascinated with the idea of this being an urban farm and this being within city limits and where people live. Thinking about our home and our family, to put a bow on the whole idea of this movement, this idea, people that live in the suburbs, people that live in condos in downtown Austin, in your mind, as somebody that's living this every day, what are the things they can do if they want to start getting introduced to the idea of this sustainable local movement without going full bore and thinking like, I'm going to go build a cabin in the woods somewhere? Like, what are the things that you've seen that get you those converts? What turns people? What's the first thing people can do if they're looking to get into this?
The very first thing that people can do, the easiest thing is to have an herb garden on their windowsill. Again, true. I go back to that point. That's the easiest thing to do because you need a bucket or a pot and you need a seed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can get more simple than that.
Didn't Jesse say the same thing, by the way? Wasn't that one of his responses when we asked him something about that? He said the same thing. So there's obviously something going on there.
The second thing, which I perceive as easy, but may be something a little bit out of people's wheelhouse, is to come to one of the urban farms here in East Austin, or go visit any farm within, a short distance from you. I mean, if you really look at it, we are 45 minutes with Austin traffic away from like 350,000 people. Yeah. And if you want to bump that to an hour, we're 2.1 million people within an hour from us. I don't really know how much more food accessible you can get. Yeah. Now, we can't feed those 2 million people, 1 million people, or 500,000 people for that matter. But, the reason that we perceive our role as an urban farm is one of educator.
I like that. Yeah.
We have school groups out here 2 to 3 times a week. We have corporate parties out here that they want tours all the time. There's many times that before dinner, I'll get a text or a phone call from the restaurant. And they're like, "Hey, someone's here that would like a tour of the farm. Are you available?"
Yeah.
And I stop work or, stop taking my break.
Yeah. Right.
and I come up here and I talk to people.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's different than going to like a big farm too. A big farm feels like it's cool, but it feels more like school field trip, like move through the line. There's the machine, the blah, blah, blah. Here's all the This is more like, hey, how you doing? Come check out the stuff we're doing right now.
Yeah, and the other farms here in East Austin are kind of like that too. So people can come here and see what we're doing. People can go to Boggy Creek and see what Carol Ann and her family is doing. People can contact Dorsey and see what House Bar's doing at the time. And there's small places that are popping up too. So one of the great things in our industry right now is that for 20 to 30 years, that average age of farmers was rising, where it was like 53, 55, 56, 58, 63 type thing. And then it popped into people's minds. And now Central Texas not only has this great group that was founded years ago called the Texas Young Farmers Coalition, but a lot of the people that founded that or were part of it are now young farmers on their own properties. So, I mean, there is easy dozen people under 40
That's amazing.
that are now running farms, at least here in Central Texas. And I would guesstimate that there has to be a handful of young farmers under 40 in every metropolitan area now.
Yeah.
There has been a resurgence. There has been a movement for young people to be involved. And once they started taking out those barriers, land access, prices, right? Yeah. Knowledge, gumption. Yeah. Once they take out these barriers, people are doing it. So if people can not plant their own, just go visit one. If you can't go visit one, ask someone to help you.
And if nothing else, buy their produce and support them.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
So, David, where can the
Wednesdays and Saturdays come buy our produce.
That's
Shameless
good.
plug. 9 to 1.
No, we're all about the plugs and shame. So that's good.
We can support them by having a delicious dinner on Friday or Saturday night.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights on Eden East, 6 to 10 p.m.
I want to do brunch. Brunch sounds fantastic.
Wednesdays and Saturdays, 9 to 1. It's
I
really
gotta get
good.
here before they take that quail and sweet potato off the wall. Or quail and sweet potato waffle off the menu.
Oh
Is
my
that still
God,
there?
you gotta come. I think that was a specialty item. Ooh. So it depends on when we get quail.
I saw it on a menu, and
it's better than chicken and waffles. It's quail and waffles.
That is.
Quail
I'm
is
sure.
always better.
Tell you what, I know someone.
Know a guy.
I know someone. I will. I'll put a word in for you, and we'll post a picture online.
All right.
And once you see that picture, scoot on down here.
All right.
Yeah, we got a code system. We got a flag down system. All right, David, where can the people find you? Where do you want them to find the farm?
No problem. You can find the farm's physical address, 755 Springdale Road, Austin, Texas, 78702, or you can visit our website at www.edeneastaustin.com. Or
You've done that a few times, haven't you?
No, it's my monotone. I feel like I don't really know how to say
You can't say a website without just going straight www.
Yeah.
www.edeneast.com. What would it be, the Micro Machine Man from the 80s, right? www.edeneast.com.
You know, there's a documentary about that guy.
I'm watching it tonight.
All right. Well, you do know
I
that.
did not know. I did not know.
Now
I'm
you're going to
watching
find
it.
it. It's 11 seconds long, though.
And his son is the narrator.
He passed on the gift. Do you guys do the Instagrams? Yeah.
We do. So you will not only have the Eden East Austin Instagram, which kind of covers everything, but then there's Farmer Eden East, which I run, and it's kind of like what we have going on, what's the science behind it, what are certain products good for, etc., along with just sharing general knowledge. And then, we usually ask a lot of people to share their own.
Yeah.
So a lot, just like the lady with the herbs that I met earlier today, or other people that are trying out recipes, we will get people to post their own photos and tag us or put the location as us, to hopefully cross promote this movement that we all believe in.
That's cool, man.
Very cool.
Well, thank you for the time. I know you got a business to run. We'll get out of your hair, but this has been really, really fun.
Great. I'm honored. Thanks, fellas. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thanks for listening to the Now You Try podcast. Check out content related to this episode and all other episodes, or contact us with questions at nowyouTry.com.